Hey guys, Dan here from DansTube.TV, and today I've got a review on the exciting new DJI drone, the DJI Spark, which is available on Amazon for $699. This is the Fly More combo, which includes the controller, 2 batteries, propellers, prop guards, and a few other things. This drone comes in white, red, green, blue, and yellow, and I will have the link in the description below to check it out. This is my what to know before you buy the DJI Spark review, and it's basically just me detailing everything that I have learned so far since flying the drone, little bits of information that I couldn't find on the internet that I felt would be very useful to you guys, and just a very thorough rundown on the Spark. Now, is this the perfect starter drone? Well, we'll have to find out by the end of the video. I would like to give a massive shout out to Ace Aviation, as they did supply the Spark for this review, and if you do want to check out their website, they offer lots of different training courses for people that want to get into drone operation and lots of different areas within aviation. I don't think you realize how small the Spark is until you actually hold it. This thing is tiny. It's smaller than an iPhone 7 Plus. It's smaller than the power bricks that they use on most consoles, like the massive Xbox 360 or Xbox One power bricks. They're kind of massive though, let's be honest. The Spark is tinier than most tins. It's just minuscule. It's amazing how small it is and how much technology is crammed into this device. Now, they quote that you get 16 minutes of flight time. Now, I think that's probably a little bit optimistic. Most of the time I was getting 14 minutes, 13 minutes, occasionally 15 minutes, but it really does depend on the conditions, depends on how windy it is, and what you're actually using the Spark for. Now, the first thing I want to jump into is the Face Aware mode, which is the advanced gesture control. Now, Face Aware, it recognizes your face and it can actually launch off from your hand or from your palm. So it was great when it worked, but I mean, I did have a lot of issues with the gesture controls at times. So I noticed that when I was wearing a hat, for example, it struggled to recognize my face. When I took the hat off, it was a little bit more reliable, I feel. I also noticed that the palm control worked maybe 6 to 7 times out of 10. When it did work though, I actually felt like a Jedi. I felt like I had so much power in my hands, and that was an amazing feeling. To be able to control such advanced technology with such primitive motions, that was amazing to me, but it was a little bit fiddly. Now, is this gimmick or is this function? Is it actually worth the hassle? I genuinely believe that palm launch is extremely important to the Spark, as you really don't get much clearance when it comes to landing on the floor. The way it's designed doesn't really complement many floors. Now, unless the floor's 100% flat, you're going to struggle, and most of the environment's got rocks or grass or some sort of terrain that is not going to be the easiest thing to land on. And I noticed that the Spark had a bit of an issue because there's not much clearance with the camera, and the fact that there's a tiny bit of surface areas to land on, a lot of the time I'd land on a rock and it would angle itself, and this really concerned me. So I feel like the palm launch and the palm land is something that would complement the actual drone itself. You can also use the palm controls, which I mentioned, which does make you feel like a Jedi. It is a little bit gimmicky and a little bit fiddly, but it is handy, and it's kind of cool to be able to do that, and pretty much anyone can pick up and do that. You also have away and follow, so it will basically go away and follow, as the name suggests. You have confirm follow as well if you just want it to follow you. You have selfie and you have beckon as well. All of these different modes are very cool to play around with, and these are all initiated through gestures. But one thing I have no idea why they haven't added is the gesture to be able to record. Now, you can start recording and then go into gesture mode, which is what I did most of the time, and that was fine, but I mean, why is there no gesture to record? Maybe they'll add this in a software update, or maybe I missed something, but there was nothing there that allowed me to use a gesture to start recording without actually physically going into the app, recording, and then going into gesture mode. When it comes to the tiny little Spark's camera, this thing is actually quite amazing considering how small this device is. It's a mechanical 2-axis gimbal, which at first on paper didn't sound great. Normally a 3-axis gimbal is going to give you a lot more stability, but amazingly enough, the 2-axis gimbal does a great job in high winds, in different terrains, different conditions. It actually did an amazing job, and it held up really well, as I'm sure you can see from a lot of the clips that I've shown so far. It's got a 12 megapixel sensor for stills. You also have 1080p at 30 frames per second, but when it comes to video transmission to your actual phone, it's 720p at 30 frames per second. But I've noticed that in terms of settings and playing around with the customization, you don't really have much control. Definitely not as much control as the Mavic, which is expected, but I noticed there's there's really limited control, so it is pretty much a pick up and fly drone. When you connect to the Spark with your mobile device, you're connecting over Wi-Fi, which is fine, but unfortunately you do get a slight bit of video delay, which is something that can ruin a shot, or it can definitely put you off or concern you, but this video delay is expected as it is going over a Wi-Fi connection. Now you can fly 100 meters away and 50 meters high with a Wi-Fi connection, but one thing to mention is I actually lost signal at about 45 meters distance, which terrified me, but you do have the return to home feature and no issues are really going to arise as long as the GPSs are all aligned and all the satellites are connected and blah 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 blah. Anyway, I had nothing around me and I was away from other frequencies, but it did return to me, which was great. When it comes to the controller itself, you have to connect to that through Wi-Fi, which doesn't really make sense to me as you're still going to have video delay and there's concerns with connection there. They do say that you get 2 kilometers of range here, and the remote control is really well designed. It looks very similar to the Mavic remote control, but you don't get a physical connection and you don't get the actual display that displays crucial flight information. On the remote control, you can turn the Spark over to sports mode, which allows you to get up to 50 km/h speeds, which is amazing for such a small device. One thing I do want to mention though, this is a big thing, birds do dive for the Spark. They genuinely dive for it, they're not scared of it, it doesn't have as much of a presence as the Mavic, and they genuinely dive for it, and it concerns me. I've seen videos online of birds hitting into the Spark, and I noticed that when I would fly up, I would have birds bombarding it, so just be mindful to not fly near birds, or just be mindful of your drone itself and where it's located, because that's a real concern and it scared me quite a lot. I did mention a little bit about the landing before, but landing is quite sketchy on the Spark. Now, it's got a tiny surface area to land on, and there is no clearance for the camera. I noticed that it struggled to land on uneven surfaces, and I noticed that the palm to land might be the better alternative or the better option here, because when you're landing there's a tiny bit of surface area, there's tiny little feet that are meant to be there to land on, but I mean, it doesn't really do the best job. I would notice it leaning one way or landing on a rock and not 100% connecting with the floor, and this is something that is quite a concern seeing as the camera is that low to the ground. One thing that I love about DJI is they've been in the industry for so long now, so you've got a trusted name, there's millions of dollars of research that have gone into drones and how they operate, and we have all of these intelligent flight modes. You have a mode called Quick Shot available to you, which has 4 different functions. So you have Rocket, which ascends with the camera pointing downward. You have Droney, where the drone flies backwards and upwards with the camera locked on your subject. You have Circle, which circles around your target, obviously. Helix is an interesting one. It flies upwards, spiraling around your subject. You also have a Tap to Fly mode, which you basically tap and it will fly in that direction. You've got Active Track, which is basically where you lock onto a subject, you draw on the screen a box around a subject, and it will track that subject, and you can do different modes within the Active Track. You have the Gesture mode, which we've discussed, and you also have Tripod mode, which basically locks it down so it's very slow and controlled. When it comes to controlling the drone with your mobile device, you have virtual joysticks which are available on the screen. Now, they were very responsive and they actually give you quite a lot of freedom and control. You have gimbal controls and movement controls, and they worked very well, but sometimes I noticed that the controls would disappear when I would go into different modes, and I'd have to actually press the DJI icon in the top left, go back into the start fly, and then they would reappear again, which is kind of terrifying when you're mid-air, but I mean, this I'm sure will be fixed in the future. Just something to mention to be mindful of, the joysticks would occasionally disappear. New modes have also been added for photography, with previous shooting modes still being included. So you have a pano mode or a panoramic mode, so you can get horizontal and vertical panoramas. You've got a shallow focus mode, which is very cool. It uses 3D vision to create a shallow depth of field. Very cool when it comes to focusing on a subject and blurring out the background. And also FPV flight is available, so if you pick up the goggles they will work on the Spark. You've got return to home, which is great. You have flight protection with geotagging so that you don't go into some sort of airport or whatever, it won't allow you to fly there. That's all built into the software, and again goes into that whole thing that I was talking about with all of the research and money that they've put into this. It ensures that you are as safe as possible. You've also got flight autonomy, so it'll fly automatically, it'll hover and set a point. intelligent batteries, and like I said, years of research to make this a safe and reliable flight. You also have obstacle avoidance when flying forward, which is very cool. It notices a subject in front and it will start beeping, and it won't allow you to hit into that subject. This is also very dependent on the light, so make sure you don't fly at night at all or in a low light situation, as the sensors don't work when they don't have as much light focused on them. So just something to be mindful of. Whew, that is a lot of information, guys. I really hope that this has helped. One final note, I guess, would be the wind. I've noticed that the Spark does a decent job of hovering and holding its position, but it does get moved around a fair bit by the wind, and it doesn't hold its point as well as other drones that I've tested from DJI. But it still does an amazing job, and overall I think this is genuinely the best starter drone on the market. It's 100%. The amount of technology that's gone into it, all of the intelligent features, all of the research that's gone into it, the amazing design behind it, how portable it is, how powerful it is, and the camera itself is beautiful, great imagery, and this thing right here, the Spark, is definitely the best starter drone on the market right now, 100%. If you want to get a drone and you want to pick up something but you don't want to go all out, then definitely look into the Spark. This thing is great, it has so much to offer, and it's a dream really. I love this little thing. I will have a link in the description below to check out the Spark, so if you are interested then please check it out as it does support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a splendid day and peace out.